1. Off the holiday. Elon Musk predicts the death of the smartphone. Nodes, AI, implanted in our brain. Discussed over turkey. And the game that my family plays every Thanksgiving turns out to be developed by the Soviets to reveal how a small group of people with special information can manipulate the masses. Werewolf or Mafia. 2. Erik Prince joins us on Venezuela and the attack on a National Guardsman. 3. The case for Texas in the college football playoff. It is Will Cain Country streaming live on a Monday here at the Will Cain Country YouTube channel, the Will Cain Facebook page, but always available by subscribing at Spotify or on Apple. Glad to be back with you after a respite, a break, a holiday. Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, as it is always a wonderful opportunity to take a break and reset, to see what conversation crops up at the table. Oftentimes those conversations can devolve into fights over Jasmine Crockett, but they can also be deeper about where we're headed with AI, robots, sex, and families. Let's get into all of that with Off the Holiday. Story number 1. Tinfoil bat, two-a-days, Dan. Scrappy Ed with us here today on Will Cain Country. You guys have a good break? Did you guys have a good holiday?
We had such a good break that
Thumbs up from Ed.
Patrick didn't even show up yet, so we're waiting on him. Must have had a really good break.
He must have had a really good break. I know he's not going to be a no-show for the show because he definitely wants to give me a piece of my mind when it comes to Texas in the college football playoff. But in due time, we will get to the family feud that is college football. But this weekend and this extended break gave us an opportunity to revisit some of the things that, well, we're all talking about over the dinner table. We're all talking about over turkey. And everyone just keeps talking about the rock star of the House, the best politician in Washington, D.C. In this corner, hailing from South Dallas, with a law degree and a fake accent, speaking as though she's coming to you directly from the streets, but in fact speaking from the podium, the dais of the House, the defamatory Jasmine Crockett.
That particular one that Lee Zeldin got up in an uproar about was specifically out of the New York area. We know that he was out of that area. So, and this obviously was not done post Jeffrey Epstein's life. So I made sure that I said a Jeffrey Epstein.
But you were trying to insinuate that it was the
I absolutely was insinuating that it could be possible. That is true. But the point is, I never said that it was that specific one because I did not have the adequate time to do it. And so the Jeffrey Epstein has stepped forward, and that's not like, a normal name. And I think that what would have been problematic is if I would have claimed that, say, that happened and it legitimately never happened.
This is incredible. This is so bad, it's great. This is a blatant liar. So blatantly lying that you begin to believe that it's the truth. This is falsehood said with certainty. This is talent. Jasmine Crockett. In this one soundbite, she addresses the allegations from a little over a week ago that she defamed not only former Congressman, current EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin for taking donations from Jeffrey Epstein, but she defamed a New York doctor whose name happened to be Jeffrey Epstein, insinuating that he was the Jeffrey Epstein. She was called out repeatedly. The truth was exposed, and Jasmine Crockett, like most human beings, you would think, would swallow the shame. But no, there's no shame to swallow, not when you can keep lying. And this is so fascinating in this particular clip because she simultaneously lies and tells the truth and spins the truth as though it is to her advantage. A lie. In that one clip, Jasmine Crockett says that we know Jeffrey Epstein came from the New York area. Therefore, this Jeffrey Epstein is easily confused with the Jeffrey Epstein because he comes from the New York area. There are over 300 Jeffrey Epsteins in America, and I would venture to say more than 2 come from the New York area. She then goes on to say that I can't read my writing when I take notes. I have no idea what I scribbled, but I wrote down things as she was speaking because I wanted to be able to keep up. She says, but you insinuated, in response to the cross-examiner, the questioner on MS Now, formerly MSNBC, but you were insinuating that it was the Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, absolutely, she says, thus telling the truth, as though that's somehow good for her, which is, of course, a lie. Then she goes on to say, but I was never specific that it was the Jeffrey Epstein. That's why I called him a Jeffrey Epstein. Back to admitting the lie and thinking it plays now as the truth. She said she was a lawyer and she learned these techniques in law school. Also, I think a lie, or actually a truth, but a lie in that it comes off as somehow complimentary of you. She simultaneously admits and deflects. She simultaneously tells the truth and lies. By the end, your head is swimming in a word salad of falsehoods and veracity. And you don't know what to think except at the end. Maybe you just quit. You give up. You wave the white flag like, okay, you win. Jasmine Crockett. And I think that's actually the technique. And I think that might actually be talent. Enough talent to make her Senator Jasmine Crockett? Second, conversation over Thanksgiving evolved into talking about the crude nature of the device that we all hold in our hands and give hours to and look at. Two-a-days Dan mentioned it's fascinating how advanced this thing has become over the last, say, decade. The you of 15 years ago could never have imagined exactly the marvel that is the phone in your hand today. And yet it's just not difficult to look at this device and say, it's so rudimentary. It's so crude. You can see where we're headed. And where we're headed is not holding a piece of plastic and glass in our hand, staring at it for 8 hours a day. That is not the vision of the future. I was talking with some of my friends. You can easily see where we're headed, and we're headed to having this implanted into our brains. In that way, it's kind of fascinating that these glasses that are hitting your Instagram feed, the meta glasses, haven't quite taken off yet because you know we're headed in this direction. Maybe a chip implanted into our brain, instant and constant interface with AI, visuals, connectivity, 2 free hands. That's exactly, by the way, what was fed into my algorithm, perhaps listening to my table conversation at Thanksgiving, as it turns out, between a conversation of Joe Rogan and Elon Musk.
What we call a phone will really be an edge node for AI inference, for AI video inference, with some radios to obviously connect to. But essentially you'll have AI on the server side communicating to an AI on your device, formerly known as a phone, and generating real-time video of anything that you could possibly want.
That is incredible and obvious at the same time. By the way, Rogan then asked Musk, how long are you talking about? When is this future?
And I think that there won't be operating systems, there won't be apps in the future. There won't be operating systems or apps. It'll just be, you've got a device that is there for the screen and audio and for and to put as much AI on the device as possible, so as to minimize the amount of bandwidth that's needed between your edge node device, formerly known as a phone, and the servers.
So if there's no apps, what will people use? Like, will X still exist? Will they be email platforms, or will you get everything through AI?
You'll get everything through AI.
Everything through AI. What will be the benefit of that, as opposed to having individual apps?
Whatever you can think of, or really whatever the AI can anticipate you might want, it'll show you.
Rogan said, how long? Musk said 5 to 6 years. This is happening at such bullet light speed. I was joking around. The interface between AI and robotics means that within our lifetime, perhaps at the age of my children, I can guarantee you this conversation is going to take place. I want you to picture a 1940s dinner table, an interracial relationship, maybe in the South, and a guy brings home his interracial girlfriend, and the racist father says, not in our house. In our lifetime, somebody's going to bring home their robot fiance and explain to their parents, I'm in love with her and we're getting married. And that conversation will be had, not in our house. This will happen, hopefully not to me, hopefully not with my children, but this will happen in our lifetime. Finally, every Thanksgiving for the past, I would say 15 years, my family plays a game. I've told you about the game. It's called Mafia. And this game is a role-playing game. It's a parlor game. It really involves no props. The only props it involves is everybody gets handed out a card. Say there's 20 people in the living room. You hand out a card. 4 are kings. There's 1 jack, 1 queen, and the rest are whatever in the deck. The 4 kings are mafia members. The jack is a sheriff. The queen is a doctor. And everybody else is a villager. And in the game, there's a moderator to ensure everybody's obeying the rules. But you go to sleep, and the mafia silently wakes up, looks at each other, and kills off one of the villagers. You go through the game, and every round, he asks the villagers to wake up. And he announces, last night, Ed was murdered. Then all of the villagers and the mafia debate amongst themselves, who's mafia? And the game is the villagers have to identify the mafia before the mafia kills off the villagers. And it is a fascinating game that reveals how well people lie. Consistency in behavior over multiple rounds. You start noticing people act differently when they're mafia than they do when they're simply a villager. Persuasion, who can convince others of the truth or a lie. Affirmative defense, go on the attack. If you are the mafia and they're coming after you, deflect and accuse, and how effective it is on the minds of the villagers. It's truly fascinating. As it turns out, Graham Linehan, the comedian who was arrested, you'll remember in the UK, he was on the Trigonometry podcast, and he started talking about it because this game also goes by another name, Werewolf. And I didn't know this about the history of mafia or werewolf.
Have you ever heard of a game called Werewolf?
No.
Everyone gets a piece of paper. It's either got villager written on it, but 2 have the word werewolf. Someone runs the game to make sure no one's cheating, and they go, okay, it's nighttime, everyone close your eyes. Werewolves choose someone to kill, and the werewolves go. They say, okay, everyone close your eyes, it's morning time, open them again. During the night, Francis was killed. There's then a conversation, and this is where it gets interesting, between all the villagers and the 2 werewolves over who the werewolves are. Then at the end of the day, the villagers have to decide who they're going to kill, and they say, well, we're going to kill Constantine. It's revealed by the person running the game, I'm afraid Constantine was a villager. And the game continues. The villagers win the game if they kill both werewolves. The werewolves win the game if they kill all but 2 villagers. And the werewolves usually win. The game was invented by a student of sociology in Russia who wanted to prove his thesis that an uninformed majority will always lose a battle of information against an informed minority.
An uninformed majority will always lose the battle against an informed minority. It's not just a game, and it's not just about individual humans and psychology. It reveals power, political dynamics, maybe in the Soviet Union, maybe in America. Who are the werewolves? Who is the mafia amongst us? Have fun. The skies cleared over Venezuela. What's next? It is Will Cain Country, streaming successfully at the Will Cain Country YouTube channel and the Will Cain Facebook page. Joining us now is the founder of the Unplugged Phone and the host of Off Leash with Erik Prince, author of Civilian Warriors as well, and the founder of the private military company Blackwater. Erik Prince joins us. Have you thought about the fact that that phone, by the way, might need to turn into an AI edge node, unplugged?
Actually, our phone is the right one for an era of AI because it puts you in control of all your data, and it's not leaving the phone. We've run side-by-side comparisons between an unplugged phone, an Android running Google mobile services, and of course an iPhone. And the other two guys contact those phones call at about 60 beats per second in terms of data, all the apps on the phone, calling back to the server. A massive trove of your data, where you go, what you buy, who you call, what you browse, everything leaving the phone all the time, effectively making you susceptible to digital grooming. So yeah, we're perfectly comfortable with an unplugged phone in an era of AI.
But you'll have to make it, listening to Elon Musk in our prior segment, Erik, it's like we're moving beyond the era of the phone, the hard device that we hold in our hands. It's going to be some type of what he calls an edge node. I can imagine a chip implanted where all of this is fed directly into our line of sight, our vision, our brain, our interface. It's in Elon's telling 5 to 6 years away where the actual device is obsolete. And so we're going to need the unplugged chip.
Well, you're going to need the unplugged business model because ours is not based on exporting and monetizing your data. I mean, the reason that Google pays, I think it's $34 billion a year to Apple is to make Google's browser the first one on an iPhone. Why? To facilitate collection and export of all your personal information. It's a fundamental different business model.
Yeah.
We had our best sales day ever on Friday. So the paradigm of a digital privacy phone is catching on in a big way.
Well, I think privacy is still going to be a value. The question is, how are we going to protect it when we're increasingly integrated as human beings into this network, whatever the network will call, internet, AI, servers, how we're increasingly, our lives and maybe even our bodies are increasingly integrated into this network. How and when can we and should we and will we protect privacy? I'm just not smart enough to know, what's coming next and what will be the values. What will be the values of humanity?
Well, we are comfortable that an unplugged operating system that puts the user in control instead of a bunch of 25-year-old super woke kids in Silicon Valley setting what appears on Apple News or in Google searches or whatever else. So yeah, we think digital sovereignty and control of your data is super, super important.
It's a good word, sovereignty. I can imagine that word gaining increasing relevance for every individual human being as we move forward into this brave new world. Speaking of Apple News, here's the headline this morning after the sad news the day before Thanksgiving. National Guard shooting suspect radicalized, quote, radicalized since he's been here in this country, claims DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. The shooting of a National Guardsman, too, the death of one National Guardsman in Washington, D.C. last Wednesday by an Afghan national brought in, I believe, in 2021 under the Biden administration, reportedly fully vetted, has many raising questions about how many of these guys are in our country. Now, there are reports to suggest this guy was, Erik, mentally ill, and there were red flags. But I think there's a very legitimate question others are asking about, well, what about assimilation? What about destabilization? What about people that went from essentially a 180-degree backwards culture of Afghanistan to the light speed, warp speed drop-in of American culture? And what does that do to someone that comes from that? And can they assimilate? Will they assimilate? Do they return to radical Islamic roots? And it's as much about this one man. I think it's a very important question about the entire population of people that we dropped into America in a very short period of time.
One of the programs my old company used to run in Afghanistan was the Afghan Border Police. And we trained tens of thousands of officers to do that. And we ran it on 5 different bases. And we actually had to add an extra week to the training because 90% of the Afghan population was illiterate. And so they're coming from a super rural, super backwards existence. And we had to do things like intro to toilet use and electric lighting and personal hygiene and all those kind of things in a first week of intro to civilization. Now, when you, and it was great because a lot of them really appreciated seeing what life was supposed to look like. The electricity worked and there was food in the kitchen and the instructors knew what they were teaching, etc. But now imagine plucking mostly people that come from that society, 90% illiterate, living in the boonies, into the super accelerated urban life of America. It is bewildering. They're completely detached, mostly from families, from a consistent job. And in the same way that people get radical when they get completely overwhelmed, yeah, this guy defaulted back to some radical interpretation of Islam. And what clearly a mistake. Clearly a mistake how Afghanistan was left to let the whole thing collapse. There was a lot of cheaper, simpler options to keep the lights on. Those were avoided. Those were ignored. And I think we have tens of thousands of Afghans that are loose in America. 10,000 men in an infantry division. So we have a couple of infantry divisions of questionable people, even if they're vetted. Clearly, they're not all vetted. It doesn't take but 1%, right? 1% of those is 100 bad eggs. Do we want 100 more of those kind of shootings? Absolutely
We've had
not.
a few more.
I have to absolutely give a shout out and my absolute admiration to the major of that National Guard unit that was not armed with a firearm, that had a pocket knife, who closed to the enemy and attacked him with a pocket knife. That, a lot of times I don't carry a sidearm. I might have a pocket knife. I've always wondered, would I have the guts to go head to head versus an armed gunman with a pocket knife? That guy has that question answered in his mind. That is true bravery.
Incredible.
Good on him.
Yeah. Incredible. You bring up, 100 of these. Well, this isn't an isolated incident. There are other examples. Several years ago, there was 2 Afghans that had planned to attack a polling station. I believe it was in Oklahoma City. They were caught before they were able to do so. There's this from very recently. Afghan national freed under Biden program arrested after TikTok bomb threat in Fort Worth. Eric, after the disastrous pullout of Afghanistan, both on air and off air, I spoke to a lot of, special forces operators in Afghanistan who work side by side with these guys. Some as interpreters, some as, side by side soldiers. Great Scott Mann, Chad Robichaux, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, that advocated for various of these guys not to be left behind in Afghanistan, where they would have been persecuted and killed under the reemergence of the Taliban. At the same time, we have all these guys in here, and I think you and I together accurately diagnosed the real issue, the real problem here. So how should we have handled that, Eric?
If we had stayed in Afghanistan, or how should we have handled the handling our allies once we decided to leave and the whole thing collapsed?
I think we have to do it under the second, because under the first, we would presume that we stayed in Afghanistan, and so too do all of our allies. But the question is that we chose to leave and leave behind these allies and bring many of them along. We are looking at the consequences of bringing those people along. So I think we have to operate from that perspective. Once we decide to pull out, what would have been the right course of action for all of these, for us to do with all of these Afghans?
It's an impossibly difficult situation because there used to be a coherent American culture that was actually a melting pot, and we have shifted to a completely fractured, fragmented patchwork quilt of cultures. And I don't know that a lot of the Afghans that were brought here are ever going to be culturally compatible with America. I would argue that the Somali concentration in Minneapolis is not culturally compatible with America. The massive Islamic concentration in Dearborn that's now blasting the muezzin, the call to prayer, 5 times a day, is culturally compatible with America. And we've allowed big pockets of non-assimilation in America. And the more we do that, the more compounding problems we're going to have going forward.
I think everyone listening can imagine the scenario you described above. You take and by the way, I think the numbers are like, is it 200,000 that we've brought over, something like that? Is it in that range?
It's a staggering number.
Yeah, and going from what they lived with, the way of life, and the advance of civilization they were in, dropped into America. I think we can all imagine that disillusionment, that disconnectedness, as you pointed out, separated from family. And you're going to, well, I don't know that you're going to, but we can all imagine some reverting back to something that makes them more comfortable, or some reaction, which could include radical Islam. So that, to me, is the major concern. There are others, like the vetting, to your point. And I think you've spoken to me about this in the past, how concerned are you about something even more, I don't know if I'd call it more nefarious, but more calculated? And that would be the existence of sleeper cell terrorists hidden amongst that population.
Highly likely. I mean, whether they're, certainly, I don't think they were recruited when Kabul fell, but the ability to find through various jihadi websites that people may visit to recruit them from afar, it's a much more likely soil for them to cultivate than a, born and bred American kid from the Midwest. It's an extremely dangerous. We've had so many unserious people put in positions of responsibility for so many years that the Trump administration is trying to clean up. And I hate to make it so partisan, but you can't have the decisions that were made under the Biden administration on preserving any kind of American cultural integrity, border integrity, were the antithesis of continuing a country. And so I'm a full Stephen Miller fan on this, that he is really laying it down on trying to get the deportation numbers up and to get control of this again. And future administrations are going to have to even be more aggressive, not less.
I talked about this, and I think I'm going to be going into this deeper, Erik, and then we'll transition into Venezuela in just 1 second. But I'm going to go into this deeper in coming weeks here on Will Cain Country. But, did you ever see that movie Gangs of New York, Erik? With Daniel Day-Lewis and Leonardo DiCaprio, about 1800s New York, right? And so, the thematic element of that was nativism and anti-immigration. And then in that movie, it was about the Irish immigration to New York City and the opposition to bringing in all these Irish. Now, over time, obviously, the Irish fully assimilate into America. And it has me wondering, is what's necessary for these more recent immigrants time? With given time, these populations integrate and assimilate in the same way we saw with the Irish, or later with the Italian, or whatever it may be. Is it that with given time, we could see the Somali population, or the Afghan population, or the Honduran population fully assimilate into American culture? Or is it, and I don't think each of these that I just rattled off are the same, but some of these, no matter how much given time, are fundamentally incompatible to the vision of Western civilization and American culture?
I think there's two things. It takes time and consequences. For all the immigration you're talking about into America, the Germans, the English, the Welsh, the Scots, the Dutch, the French, the Italians, all those waves and waves of people. It stopped. The door closed in 1924. Time.
Right.
If we had not done that, because imagine, so 1924, by 1943, you had Italian Americans who probably still spoke Italian in the home, living in Brooklyn, invading Italy and fighting initially Italians and then Germans on Italian soil. Tens of thousands of Italian Americans doing that. So that is, yes, time and unity of purpose and consequences. Why consequences? They had to get jobs. They had to make ends meet. If you have millions of people, as we do, on a completely subsidized, fraudulent welfare system where they can live in a bubble of corruption and ethnic isolation, you're going to have not assimilation, but cancerous tumors of completely not appropriate societies trying to coexist and trying to conquer additional parts of American society. That's a huge problem. 1924, we did not have the pervasive welfare state. We shut the door on it. And the 1965 Ted Kennedy Immigration Act changed the nature of immigration from largely Western Europe as the preponderance of immigrants to the inverse of that, making it exceedingly difficult for white people to immigrate to America. Shocker. While promising on the Senate floor, we're not going to have waves and waves of unqualified immigrants rolling into America. Everything that Ted Kennedy promised on the Senate floor was a big effing lie, and we're suffering for it.
And we should say the leap from Somalia to American culture is not as big as the leap from Ireland to American culture. There are shared values, shared ways of life for someone coming from Ireland, probably France. I have to think about France, but probably France. That makes it a much smaller leap to assimilation than someone coming from Somalia or Afghanistan.
Somalia or Afghanistan. Somalia, where there is a massive amount of cousin marriage, inbreeding, more than 50%, marrying first cousins, with all the resultant severe mental deficiencies and other diseases that result from that. It is a fundamental different view of the world. I mean, Somalia with female genital mutilation, tribal practice of women holding little girls down and cutting off some of their private parts. That's not culturally acceptable in America. But believe me, in the Somali community, it's done. Or it's continued.
I wonder, what do you think that's like in Minneapolis?
Done to this day.
That in Minneapolis, I haven't dug into that. In Minneapolis?
I'm sure it is. I will bet serious money on that.
That would be a fascinating investigation. Is that happening in that population in Minneapolis?
And a violation of civil rights.
Yeah. Okay. I also want to ask you about what's going on in Venezuela. So President Donald Trump posted this over the holiday. He said, to all airlines, pilots, drug dealers, and human traffickers, please consider the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So, first of all, Eric, what does that tell you? What's about to happen in Venezuela?
That's another layering on of severe pressure. That means the airspace is closed. That means there's no commercial flights in and out of there at all. There had been some pressure previously, and then the Maduro regime came back and said, well, if you're not going to fly in here, you're going to lose your operating license. I think 8 out of the 10 companies did not come back and didn't continue flying. And now that would indicate that there may be strikes are more likely. What I have heard is that Maduro is teetering on leaving. I think it's almost a done deal. And an interesting side note is that a henchman of one of the people around Diosdado Cabello, who's a really bad guy, was searching for an aircraft to leave, for a jet to fly him out to Turkey. But sadly for him, that jet wouldn't come because of that airspace closure. So I think the rats are looking for a way to flee the ship. I hope that the president can pull this off with a very big flex of proper gunboat diplomacy. And I hope that a actual legitimate government can be installed in Venezuela and not the criminal cartel that runs it now.
Okay. I hope carries a lot of weight. So, like everything else we've learned in foreign policy, from Iraq to Afghanistan, then what is the great big mystery box in the lead? So Maduro leaves. Let's say Maduro steps down. I don't think we can just assume a legitimate democratic government assumes power in Venezuela. What fills the vacuum if the head is cut off the snake, if it is Maduro?
I would imagine the negotiation is for Maduro and his wife and the two stepkids and Granco and Diosdado Cabello and Padrino, the Minister of Defense, Jorge and Delcy Rodriguez, the two vice presidents of the country, their siblings. Their father was a murdering, extortion kidnapper, right? They're kind of in the same family business. I would imagine all of them leave. The deal for them is to leave, take as much money, go somewhere else. And Maria Corina Machado or some other caretaker government comes in. I would imagine there's serious senior talks with some other general who would be the chief of staff or the head of the military. But they're going to need a lot of help because the narco state has fully integrated themselves into Venezuelan society. There's 34 commercial narcotic production facilities scattered around the country. So there's a lot of bad people stand to lose a lot if there is a change in government, be it a peaceful one or a violent one. So Maria Corina will
What about the military? Can we assume the military would be loyal to Maria Corina Machado? Like who assumes control of the military?
I think most of the military will go with whoever's paying them. I would say, look, the fact is, the Maria Corina won that election like 70-30, which means at least 70% of society wants the Maduro cartel to leave. I think that also would apply across the military. So yeah, you'll have some split. The National Guard of Venezuela is probably the biggest problem, the most pro outgoing regime. I'd say you invite them all to their bases and offer them double the pay, and like the Iraqi army should have been, paid to stay in place. There's a lot of things that can be done with proper applications of cash.
Would it, in your mind, is it capable of being pulled off without U.S. military intervention on the ground in Venezuela?
Yes. We do not. I do not believe we'll need any kind of U.S. military presence on the ground in Venezuela. I think if Maduro still is playing games and doesn't want to leave in the final negotiating point, there's a lot of covert action that could apply pressure directly onto a couple of those key decision makers around Maduro. If Diosdado Cabello has killed a lot of people, and I don't think any Venezuelan would weep seeing him go. So that's the next layer of pressure that should not be done by the U.S. military. That should be done. That's why we have covert action for, and I hope they're exploring those options.
So set aside the drugs for a moment. One of the arguments of what would be a benefit to the United States for a change in power in Venezuela is to mitigate, perhaps even zero out or kick out the influence of China, to a lesser degree perhaps Russia and Iran, but China's influence in the Western Hemisphere. Are we to presume that the Chinese, whatever their tentacles are into Venezuela at this point, simply let it go?
There's really not that much Chinese tentacles in Venezuela. There's been some big construction projects for some housing. They haven't really done much in the oil space anymore because the Venezuelan government screwed them around so much. The main Chinese hooks in our hemisphere are into Mexico. There's been a massive onslaught of Chinese businessmen that have bought into factories, built factories to feed the U.S. under NAFTA, where they can push content from mainland China, do minimal value added additional manufacturing to it in Mexican soil, and then push it north to America. Also, the
Okay.
fentanyl trade is.
Go ahead. Keep going on the fentanyl trade for a minute.
The fentanyl trade enabled, funded, organized, trained by the Chinese Communist Party with massive chemicals shipped over in ships into facilities where Chinese nationals have been teaching the cartels how to produce fentanyl in greater and greater industrial quantities in Mexico. That's the problem. That's what's also killing a lot of Americans. The super left-wing money has been a big corrosive effect across all of Latin America, where you take Colombia, which has been a stalwart ally, actually standing tall, standing strong against the drug trade, which is now run by a narco, right? Petro is a really bad, the president of Colombia is a very bad dude. They used to call him the shitter because he would defecate on the heads of hostages held in jungle camps during the 80s. The guy was a former senior guy in M19, the Colombian Communist Party, a really bad dude. And now he's the president of Colombia, and largely enabled by Venezuelan money to get there.
I know you got to go in just a second. So one last question, Eric. So back to Venezuela, and I'm glad you brought up Mexico. It seems to me, from my vantage point, that all the arguments made for the pressure the United States is putting on a change in power in Mexico are a fraction, maybe a high fraction, but a fraction of the same arguments to be made about what's going on in Mexico. The Chinese influence, the drug influence, it's all greater in Mexico than it is in Venezuela in its impact on the United States. So why are we so dead set on doing something in Venezuela that we're not, for example, pressured to do in Mexico?
Because in the case of Venezuela, there is no semblance of a democracy anymore. This last election, the receipts are there. It's proven. The Maduro clan lost the election by 40 points, 70-30. And they just full on stole the election. In the case of Mexico, there was an election. Sheinbaum was supposedly elected. Now, in the run-up to that election, there was 27 conservative candidates that were executed, assassinated in the process of campaigning. Okay, enabled with Chinese money, carried out largely by cartel muscle, to grind away at any kind of political opposition to a super left-wing takeover of the Mexican state. So yeah, the Chinese are pulling a big covert action program on us in Mexico, undermining our border state. And that's a problem. We have a fantastic ambassador there, Ron Johnson. I have great confidence we should follow his leadership. I first met Ron at the CIA station in Kabul in 2002. And Ron was a ground branch paramilitary officer then. And before that, he'd been a colonel in the U.S. Army Special Forces, went through a full career, retired, and then joins the agency as a junior guy, as a ground branch officer, and works his way up for an entire another career doing paramilitary work, and then becomes U.S. ambassador to El Salvador at El Salvador's hour of need and helps Bukele tamp down on the rampant criminal gangs that are there. And Ron Johnson has answered the call yet again, now as U.S. ambassador to Mexico. If I were Washington, I would listen to Ron Johnson's very clear experience and guidance on what to do in Mexico.
Sounds like I need to get Ron Johnson here on the program. All right, I did have Erik Prince, though. It's always a great conversation. I know you got to go, Eric. Thanks for the time you've given us today. Always enjoy talking to you.
You bet, Will. Merry Christmas.
All right, Merry Christmas. You heard him, by the way. The Unplugged Phone had a huge Black Friday. So that's his thing, founder of Unplugged Phone. Okay, let's stop playing nice. Let's get into this. Why Texas should be in the college football playoff. Next on Will Cain Country. You ready to see Tinfoil Pat lose his ever-loving mind? I make the case for Texas in the college football playoff. It is Will Cain Country at the Will Cain Country YouTube channel and the Will Cain Facebook page. Hey, we had a little problem with the stream earlier, a little technical difficulty. We got it back online. We appreciate you hanging in there and rejoining us once the stream was rebooted. I was talking a little bit earlier, Tinfoil Pat, Two-A-Days Dan, Ed, about werewolf and mafia. I'm so fascinated by this. You guys always wonder why I'm into like Love is Blind. Well, me playing Mafia, it's very similar. I just love the experiments that reveal so much about us. I feel like we walk around in our lives with so much fakeness. And now, I'm not indicting all of us. Some of it's necessary for social cohesion. You can't constantly be putting people in pressure situations to see what you're really like, but I think I just love this, like stripping away all of the things that we all do and the way that we act to get to how we actually are. And maybe like in Mafia, you find out who's a really good liar and who's a bad liar. Well, that doesn't mean that person always walks around lying. It just means they understand things about human communication. And did you guys ever watch Survivor?
Yeah.
Like, I was never a guy that's like, wow, the way you played Survivor reveals how you are in the real world.
Yeah.
No, dude, it's a game. It's a game. And you can do the game the way the game works. But it's real fascinating to see how different people can and can't, or how people react to strategizing and politicization and manipulation. And so I love it. And then, Dan, you were saying there's a show that is basically werewolf or mafia.
So it's called Traitors. They start with 30 people, usually people from Survivor or Big Brother, like all those types of people that can do that. You start with 30 people, then they blindly pick 3 traitors. And so all the faithfuls have to find out who the traitors are. And if the traitors are the last ones standing, they win. If the faithfuls get all the traitors out, they win. So it's literally, and the traitors usually win because they have the information, is going to your point. So
and it's a reality show?
It's a reality show, yeah. A buddy of mine's actually going to be on the next season, which is funny. I want to see if he could lie very well.
Really? Yeah. What's it on? I've never even heard of it.
It's on
what's
Peacock.
It on?
So it's an NBC show. So they have UK, they have US,
I'm interested.
They have Canada, they have Australia. It's a very, very big show, but it's exactly like this, and it's fascinating to see how people can and cannot deal with that kind of lying. And some people get so upset because they're like, well, I thought you were my friend. No, it's a game.
I think you could actually televise. I think somebody has. I think I've seen it on YouTube at some point. Somebody televised, just play the game. You don't have to do a full-on reality show. Just play the game on camera.
Do you judge people?
And it would be so fascinating to see how people are and how they react and how well they lie or how well they persuade and how you move masses. At this point, I'm going to be honest. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at it. I'm pretty good at it.
What does that say about you?
Well, it's
remember
just
for the next segment, people.
Yeah.
But it works against me. Like at this point,
I don't want to play with my wife.
Now everybody's skeptical of me, and now everybody's skeptical of me. Like they're like, it doesn't matter if I'm mafia or villager. Like they think I'm whatever. I'm suspect. So it works against me being, well, honestly, good at the game. Like my son, my 14-year-old's like 2 days ahead of Thanksgiving. He's like, I'm killing you right away. I don't care what you are. He's like, because that's another thing. Like, I remember when he was like 11, maybe, we played, and I just drug him along. And at the very end, I was mafia, and it's such betrayal because he was trusting me the whole time.
So you're 11.
I'm like, it's a game, dude. I don't do this in real life. Okay, remember it for the next segment, says Patrick. Maybe. Okay, we got 2 big sports stories we got to talk about. Let's do Lane Kiffin first. Lane Kiffin has left Ole Miss to become the new head coach at LSU. Ooh. This soap opera drug on forever, and it drug on past the stated deadline of Saturday night. Reports are the reason it drug on is that he was trying to convince Ole Miss to let him coach the team through the end of the year, through their playoff run. Hey, maybe they can win a national championship. And Ole Miss said, absolutely not. You're not doing that. You're not going to be able to recruit our players away from you. It makes sense from Ole Miss's perspective. And I'd say right now, Lane Kiffin is villain number 1 in college football. Like, that's the popular consensus. And for a whole host of reasons, including, like, you ask these people, these kids, these players to buy in, and you leave the minute something better comes along. You want your cake and eat it too, that you're going to get to go, but you wanted to stay and coach it in. I will say the main thing that bothers me about this, and maybe I'm wrong, but Lane Kiffin is going to LSU to do the thing purportedly that he's actually doing right now at Ole Miss. So it's a little hard to stomach, like all the arguments, like, well, you have a better chance of winning a national championship at LSU. Why? I don't know. You get better recruits. They have bigger NIL budgets, whatever it may be. But Ole Miss is in the playoffs. They're like going to be a 5 or 6 seed, maybe a 7 seed. And in an era of college football parity, Ole Miss has a real shot to win the national championship. I don't think they're a favorite. I don't think they're in the top 3, maybe not the top 4, mainly because of their quarterback. But they have a real shot. Any given Saturday does not usually apply in college football, but it does increasingly now.
Does it with Texas?
More and more. Weirdly, with the NIL and all that, we've never had more parity in college football. We've never had it. And so maybe it's the transfer portal, but I just have trouble. Like, I could have seen this happening 10 years ago and it made more sense, going to LSU over Ole Miss.
Brian Kelly
but
did
now,
it similarly.
And how did that work out for Brian Kelly?
Yeah. I mean,
it didn't work out too well. Yeah. Talking about going from Notre Dame to LSU.
Yeah.
Same thing with Lincoln Riley. Going to USC from OU hasn't worked out the way that he thought it would, giving him a greater opportunity to win national championships. He was closer to national championships at Oklahoma than he ever has been so far at USC. And
I think it made a lot of sense. Riley.
Go ahead.
Because if you think about it, okay, so Riley's coming into the SEC. Potentially, they're going to be in the West. You have to go against Saban every year at the time, right? And then also, like, you have this revolving door of, like, Jimbo's running, a real big program at A&M. You have LSU, who just came off national title. Like, you had all these behemoths that you would have to go up against from the West. Whereas USC, I think they were still in the Pac-12 then. So, it made a lot of sense to me. You could rebuild that program and, potentially make a national championship more easily.
Well, but it's sort of the same thing of Kiffin. Kiffin's here in one. I mean, Riley was there over a several-year period of time where he was in the conversation, in the range of winning a national championship. So you're trading, Patrick, for a marginal theoretical increase. Like the Ole Miss to LSU thing, I will grant, over a 5-year period, which program has a better shot of winning a national championship? Probably LSU. But it's marginal. It's not, the gap isn't what it used to be, right? So let's call it a 15% increase in probability, maybe 20% increase in probability at LSU than Ole Miss. But the problem with that is now you have to normalize that out from where they are right now. And Ole Miss is closer to a national championship right now than LSU is. And I think I don't know if he's burned his reputation because everything comes back quick if you win, but it's like he traded 90 cents for a theoretical dollar. The upside isn't that much higher. Maybe if you can create a dynasty, you'll look back on it and go, no, it was actually $10. He traded 90 cents for $10. But right now, it looks like trading 90 cents for $1.
What's the pay?
By the way, I'm assuming the money's evened out. I'm assuming the money is evened out because Ole Miss said they were going to match whatever anybody else paid. So it's really about program
that was
value.
Different. Yeah. The NIL budget, I think, was the thing that was the bigger picture.
Okay, but Ole Miss has been one of the biggest we all agree like this on this, right? Ole Miss has been one of the biggest NIL buyers of the past 5 years. Guys transfer to Ole Miss and are getting paid. Guys are transferring from Texas A&M to Ole Miss and getting paid.
Yeah, but they've lost some players. I mean, I'm pretty sure Judkins went from Ole Miss to OSU, and players like that where they have
did. But didn't Walter Nolan go from A&M to Ole Miss? The defensive tackle is now in the NFL. I think that was his path, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that was more of a just a coaching instability issue, I think.
S. Mason in the chat is saying Lane is a snake.
Yeah, I don't like this for Lane
that's
versus
what everybody feels.
Versus like Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley made a lot of sense. I don't think this makes a lot of sense for Lane.
Well, who's closer to a national championship today, OU or USC? I get what you're saying at that moment in time, but that moment in time has changed since then. And I will say if Lincoln Riley had spent the last how long has he been gone? 4 years, 3 years? If he'd spent the last 3 or 4 years at OU, he'd be closer to a national championship than he is at USC. He might have. I don't think he would have won one.
2021
could have been this year.
But now that Saban's gone, that makes more sense, right? But like Saban was there, and like even Jimbo Fisher was butting his head up against the wall, over and over again, even with those top recruiting classes. So it's like, it could potentially make you look really bad as a coach. So we're looking in hindsight because
Nick
we see
Saban's
Saban gone.
But Kirby Smart's there.
Yeah,
George is the new Alabama. Kirby's the new Nick Saban. That's what it is.
But we still had divisions then, is what I'm saying. So like when you had all the information in your hand, it made sense for Riley. But all the information now, this is a new landscape. It doesn't make sense for Kiffin to me.
Yeah. We used to play this game like if you were the top quarterback in the country and you could go anywhere, right? Like, I know this sounds like, and this will be a good transition, a homer thing to do, but I love the decision that Arch made. Like, I used to say back in the day, because I'm old, I used to say back in the day, because I'm old, I would have thought it'd been cool to go to UCLA. Because with the history of Troy Aikman, and UCLA had a historic program, they were never great, but they weren't what they are now. And the idea of building a program up and owning it and being that hero is attractive, where being the next Alabama quarterback makes you one in a line of conveyor belts, right? Like, yeah, there's glory. It's great. But you don't win the debate of the best quarterback in Alabama history, And so Kiffin could have been to Ole Miss what, I don't know. It's hard to say Saban at Alabama or Kirby at Georgia because there were predecessors to those guys. But there's no real predecessor to Kiffin at Ole Miss. He would have been the program. The statues would have been his. Now Kiffin, if he does it, well, so did Ed Orgeron. So did Nick Saban. You're one in a line of guys who are expected to do it at LSU.
Yep.
And that's why I like Arch's decision to go to Texas. Not exactly the same, but it's like Texas was down, basically, and he gets to be the guy that brings Texas back instead of Arch's options were anywhere else he wanted to go, Georgia or Alabama or whatever, being the next in the line of great quarterbacks from those programs.
Do you see Lance succeeding?
Go ahead, 2 days.
Do you see Lance succeeding at LSU? Like, why couldn't Brian Kelly do it? I mean, Brian Kelly was a good coach, good mind. I mean, I don't understand the difference.
I don't know. I think it's a combination. Brian Kelly's a bad cultural fit.
Yeah, true.
I think the expectations at LSU are so high. Yeah. Like Brian Kelly's record, I believe, was like, it wasn't horrible. It wasn't like 50-20 or something like that. I don't know what it was, but Lane Kiffin at LSU, it's 30. Like on paper, that's not awful, right? What is that? That's a 7-4 record every year, which is not going to cut it at
10-4,
LSU.
10-3, 9-4, 5-3.
Yeah, that's crazy. That got him fired.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's insane.
So good luck, Lane. Like you got don't lose 2 games.
That's insane.
Definitely don't lose 3 games. Speaking of losing 3 games, all right. I think I don't want to go on offense. I just want to say it. Thesis. 9-3 Texas should be in the college football playoff. The floor is yours, Tinfoil Pat.
This is I don't know. You've had a lot of really bad sports takes, and this might be one of them. First of all, you lost 3 games. We have a lot of 1-loss and 2-loss teams that should not be left out because you guys are around. 2, you guys have a high blue chip level, probably top 3, top 5 in the country.
Bang.
We should be holding you to a higher standard, not a lower standard. 3, what else did I say, Tim? 2 days. 3, you guys didn't just lose 3 games.
The Ohio State.
You went to overtime against Mississippi State.
Kentucky.
You went to overtime against Kentucky. Like, Mississippi State didn't fire their coach. Kentucky did.
Uh-oh, he's taking notes.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Like, you guys were egregiously pathetic most of the year. I watched a lot of your games because I had to, because they were just in that time slot. It was not good. Like, if people watch football, they wouldn't think Texas was one of the top 12 teams this year.
And
now you had a few good wins. I'll give you that. But even then, Texas A&M, they didn't face anybody in the top half of the SEC until they faced you. They had no real tests.
So it's
you beat
Vanderbilt. Not a great victory.
It's fine. It's a fine victory. I'm saying, were they the number 3 team in the country? I'm sorry, Casey Smith. Probably not. Okay. Now Vanderbilt.
Okay. Are you done?
That's a good win.
I'm ready.
John Mateer. Okay, you beat John Mateer. He just came off an injury. He's not 100%. You didn't beat a full strength Oklahoma
John
team.
Mateer just threw 3 interceptions. Just this week, he threw 3 interceptions. He's the same guy. The injury thing is total BS. He's the same guy.
They are who they thought we thought they were. Whatever.
And don't lose to Florida. Okay.
Ready?
Like, I know I did. My team did, but we suck. We're not saying we're going to make the playoffs.
Dan.
Anyway, go ahead.
Dan, will you pull up the rankings real quick? I want to go through the 10-2 teams. You know what? I'm even going to throw an 11-1 team in, BYU. Okay, first standard of making the college football playoffs. Best 12 teams in the country. We are going to take it and put the group of 5 aside. One group of 5 gets to go in. So now we are in the best 11 teams in the country conversation. Okay, now I want to ask you something, Patrick. Don't look. He's already getting all. Look at him. He leaned back. He brushed his hair. He folded his arms.
He's never going to lay half.
I want you to be honest. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Best 11 teams in the country. You say you watched a lot of Texas. The Texas that you have seen over the last 3 to 4 weeks, is that the Texas team that lost to Florida? Is that the Texas team that went to overtime against Kentucky? I'm asking you, honestly, is that the same team?
You have to consider the entirety of the season. You can't just go off of a few weeks.
Patrick, I'm a very organized communicator. I will legitimize what you said, but that's separate than what I'm asking you right now. I am asking you, is that the same team?
Wait, when did they play Georgia? Was that 3 or 4 weeks ago?
I count Georgia in. Yeah, I'm counting Georgia in my bucket. Trust me.
You got blown out by Georgia.
Are you just do you watch the games, or do you just look at the score afterwards? I'm curious.
I watched the games. Yeah, you guys lost by 25 to Georgia.
Did you watch Texas Georgia? Did you watch that game?
So why? Okay, yes.
That game was not a blowout. That game was within a touchdown up until the fourth quarter. Everybody's acknowledged this. Joel Klatt acknowledged that during the broadcast tonight. If you're going to go blown out by Georgia, you didn't watch the game. You didn't watch the game. Okay? My point on this is this. The Texas team that's played the last 3 or 4 weeks is not the Texas team from earlier in the year. So I'm talking about the Texas team today. And that is largely predicated on the development of 2 things. The offensive line, which has gotten better. That was evidenced against A&M. And most notably, the quarterback has gotten vastly better. Vastly. Arch is a different dude from the dude he was earlier in the season. I will eat a lot of crow. I thought they should bench Arch. I thought Arch was a bust. All these things. Arch needed time to figure it out. And in that Georgia game, Arch was really good. Starting at the back end of the Mississippi State game, Arch was really good. Vanderbilt, really good. A&M, good. So he is now not as good as he was against Vandy, against A&M, but still good. Leading me to this, is Texas one of the top 11 teams in the country? Just that simple. That doesn't mean they should be in the playoffs. I'm just asking you. Are they one of the top 11 teams in the country? In order to do this, let's back our way in, Dan. These teams right now, I think, are in the debate ahead of Texas. Is Texas better than Vandy? I think we know the answer to that. They're 10-2. Texas is 9-3, but Vandy's 10-2.
I would say yes.
Is Texas better than Vandy? You have to say yes.
They beat them
head to head. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Is Texas better than Oklahoma? Also 10-2.
I don't think Oklahoma's very good.
Yes, they are.
Fair, fine, whatever they beat them.
Sure.
Also, I think Oklahoma's overrated. I think they got a good defense, and I think John Mateer is going to cost them a game pretty quick in the playoffs. Better than Oklahoma. Is Texas better than BYU?
That I don't know.
Nothing?
No.
I feel pretty good. If that game started tomorrow, who would be favored?
BYU game, so I can't.
I don't go off of Vegas odds. That's ridiculous because obviously you guys have.
We're doing the Patrick odds. Who do you think is better? Okay, keep going, Dan. Who are the 10-2 teams ahead of them? Alabama?
Notre Dame, Alabama.
Yep.
Not better than
I feel
Notre
good
Dame.
about Texas against Notre Dame.
I don't.
Oh, I feel good that they're better than Notre Dame.
I do not.
You've literally beat
Dude,
nobody.
We've gotten a lot better.
See, they
literally
lost those
the best-
games early on, and then they got better as the season's gone on.
That's true.
Yeah. See how that works?
And we
Evidenced by
barely
what?
lost to those
Who
two
did Notre Dame
teams.
beat? Who did Notre Dame? Didn't Notre Dame lose to A&M?
Yeah.
By a
And
point?
Miami.
Yeah.
And Texas
Miami.
just beat A&M.
By 3.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
But I
Texas
think
if they're
beat
playing
A&M.
later in the year, they might have
if
won.
we face Miami now, we would definitely beat Miami. If we face A&M now, I think we beat A&M.
Okay. Notre Dame, Miami's another one.
Yeah.
Bama. Okay, we've got a list of the 10-2 teams. BYU's 11-1. At a minimum, you agreed with me that Texas is better than some of those 10-2 teams, right? You, at a minimum, you give me Vandy and Oklahoma. You might give me BYU. And I'm going to bet Miami, Notre Dame, and Bama. I bet I get one of those as well. The Texas is better. What does that mean? That means that although records matter, they're not the end-all, be-all. 10-2, 9-3, not the end-all, be-all. Okay, so you're saying, who's the better team? Apparently, we're not just counting losses at this point. Now, we go to this. Victories. This is the biggest feather in Texas's cap. Nobody, not Ohio State, not Georgia, has more, however you want to do this, top 10 victories than Texas. They have 3. Top 10 at the time that they played that team. You don't like that metric?
Nobody
How about
counts
top
that.
15
Look,
right
listen,
now?
2014 FSU played top 5 Notre
Patrick,
Dame team.
this
and that
legal
doesn't
brief
count.
has a lot of lines in it. You don't like that one? Go to the next legal brief. Okay? How about this? Nobody has 3 top 15 victories. That's right now, according to current rankings. Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M. I believe at the time it's 3, 6, and 8. Now it's we'll see when the rankings come out, but they'll all be top 15. 2 of them will be top 10, Oklahoma and A&M, and Texas beat them all. Nobody else has those victories on their record. Nobody. They have 1, they have 2, nobody has 3. Now I will tell you this. Texas shouldn't have lost to Florida. It's bad. It's real bad. And I felt it at the time, and I know it, and it is today. And it is the thing that's going to kill Texas. But you know what's actually the thing that's killing Texas? Ohio State. That they lost to Ohio State. Because if they just did what other schools do, if they just scheduled patsies, they'd be 10-2. The Florida loss would mean nothing. And can we agree they'd be in the college football playoff? If they're 10-2 and just beat A&M, 3 top 15.
You had 3 patsies already.
We also played the number 1 team in the country on the road. We went to Columbus, lost by 7, outgained Ohio State by 200 yards in Arch's first ever start, and lost that game. And if we didn't do that, if we did what Bama does, or Florida State, I guess Florida State scheduled Alabama.
Yeah, you
so
might not
good
want
on
to do that.
But
Yeah, it's the one thing we got.
Well, I'll do it the other way. I'll do it the other way. If we just do what Bama does and schedule Florida State, how about that? If we just scheduled Florida State instead of Ohio State, we'd be 10-2 today. We'd be 10-2. So
we're still lost.
Then this is a serious issue for the College Football Playoff Committee. They want teams to do what Texas did. They want them to go to Ohio State. They want them to schedule USC. They want them to schedule Georgia in non-conference. They want Texas Penn State. They want Georgia, Michigan. They want those games. And if they punish Texas for losing that game, no one's going to do it. Why would you do it? What's the upside? What's the upside? Is Ohio State getting brownie points for beating Texas? No. Is Texas going to get hurt for losing to Ohio State? Yes. So you are telling every college football program, make sure that you play Sam Houston State. I know we did. Make sure you play them and nobody else in any non-conference game, and you'll get that. That's the argument for Texas in the playoffs. Better than a bunch of 10-2 teams, which you agreed to. So now you've agreed that losses don't matter as much as you want them to matter. Then reward big victories. Nobody in the country has more big victories than Texas. And schedule tough. That's the argument for Texas.
I
Also,
never,
by the
I
way,
never
they just been
said,
more fun to
I never
watch.
conceded. Wins have to matter. Wins have to matter. You lost. You won 9. They won 10. Other teams won 11. Those have to matter. Otherwise,
why don't you have James? Do you have James Madison? Do you have James Madison in the playoffs? Is James Madison in your playoff bracket?
North Texas.
If they win their conference,
I think
they're
11-1.
They are. So is North Texas.
I think they're 11-1.
Yep.
Okay, they win their
Yeah,
conference.
North Texas is 11-1. Do you?
They might jump the ACC winner.
Not the auto bids.
Tulane's 10-2.
No,
Yeah.
Patrick, we're not doing the auto bids. We're doing the at-larges. And
They're
you've got
freaking
11
G5.
wins over
it's
James
much
Madison.
different than a P4. P4 teams.
Oh, but if I schedule G5 teams out of conference and get 10 wins, cool, right? You're not going to be mad about that. Because wins matter,
else?
To your point.
Listen, Alabama, they had 3, right? Just like you guys did. Right?
3 what?
3 G5s.
3 what? Losses?
No. They scheduled cupcakes, just like you guys did. They also
You
scheduled
argue wins matter, and I'm giving you nobody has better wins than Texas. Nobody.
Wins matter.
Nobody has better wins than Texas.
Wins
It's
matter.
cumulative. Big number.
When you have the same, when you're comparing things, just like head-to-head matters. If you have 2 10-2 teams, head-to-head probably matters. If you have a 10-2 team and a 9, what's a quality win? Because look.
Okay,
listen,
so
the
Overranked
SEC.
opponent.
The SEC during the preseason has all these teams ranked, and then they beat up on each other, and they go, "Well, we beat a top 5 team, we beat a top 10 team." You guys started number 1, and you lost 3
So you would
games.
have James Madison in above. You would have James Madison in above Miami, right?
They're
And Notre Dame.
G5. I would.
You'd have North Texas. You would have North Texas in above Oklahoma and Vanderbilt
They're G5.
because hey, more wins.
Well, here's a question, Will.
It doesn't count.
Say
It's
you
not the
get
same.
in the
Go ahead.
playoffs. Are you beating an Ohio State now? Are you beating a Georgia? Are you beating an Indiana? That's the
I think
question.
Texas could beat anybody. I think Texas could beat anybody right now.
Really?
I think that I'm not saying that they will or they'll be favored, but how about this? I think first round matchup, let's say Texas was the 11 seed, so that means you're playing I always get confused on this. That means you're playing the 6 seed.
Ole Miss,
and that,
Texas
let's call
Tech.
it the 6 seed Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Who has a better shot of beating Ole Miss? Texas or James Madison? Texas or North Texas?
Well, Ole Miss should be left out here.
Okay.
You can have Ole Miss's spot because they shouldn't be in the playoff because they don't have their coach, and that is a major red flag.
Full circle.
They're not the same team. I mean, we already have precedents on this. Just keep them out of the play. Just blow the whole daggum thing up, and none of it matters anymore. It doesn't matter. Why do you even
Let's get rid of college
Why do you even
football.
play
The
the game?
audience can now hear.
Let's not even
the
play
audience
the game.
has long left.
Let's get rid of college football.
The audience is long gone. Dan, what's happened to the numbers over the course of this 20-minute
Well,
debate?
you know, it's a little bit lower.
Here's
a little bit lower.
Patrick only thinks about things through the prism of Florida State. It's all about Florida State getting jobbed out of the playoffs
Ding,
a few
ding,
years
ding,
ago.
ding.
That's all this is. That's why Ole Miss, he's saying, shouldn't be in the playoffs. That's why he hates the quote-unquote blue bloods, because it became clear in that moment that Florida State's not a blue blood. He hates brands. He hates everything because of that year.
We were a blue
Florida
blood.
State got left out.
We were a blue blood. We are not in the we are not in the SEC. We're not in the Big Ten. We want to leave. People make fun of us for trying to get out of this hellhole of a conference that nobody
You were a
puts-
blue blood.
Give any
Right.
value.
Remember
We
the
were.
Jeffersons? You're the opposite of the Jeffersons. Moving on up, you're moving down, baby.
You're damn
You're
right.
moving
Like,
on down.
we suck. Like, our administration does not care about football, and whatever. But like,
This is depressed, Patrick.
you can't say that Florida State was not an elite team at one point, and we even won a national championship more recently than either of your teams. So just saying.
True.
Okay, just saying. By the way, just saying, Cowboys might be. Speaking of teams that are really good, how about the Cowboys ever since they traded for Quinn Williams? Chiefs,
The delusion
Eagles,
there
who
is
cares in the Super Bowl
fascinating.
last year? It's Dallas Cowboys. I don't know if we can catch everybody else for playoff, but don't nobody want to play the Cowboys right now. Don't nobody want to play the Cowboys, Ed. All right. Don't nobody watching the Will Kane Country Show anymore right now. They're all gone. But if you weren't, that was one hell of a college football debate. All right. Don't let that dissuade you. Tomorrow we'll be back. Same time, same place. We'll see you next time.